Hello, fellow Jehovah Witnesses, ex-Jehovah Witnesses, whoever's watching. I've watched a lot of videos here, and I've found them to be of great benefit in dealing with some issues. I thought maybe it's about time I actually said something on my own instead of just listening to your videos and doing nothing myself. I was pretty much born into the faith. I think I was a few months old when middle of winter blizzard. There was a banging on the door. Apparently, I've heard this story so many times from my father. And two brothers were standing there. And snow apparently just came right in the door. It was a bad storm. Bad storm. Anyways, my father couldn't understand why these people would be out in this weather. So he invites them into the house. He says some choice words to them about how stupid they are being out in that weather. They could die. We lived far up north. Way, way up north. Anyways, I think he'd been looking for a god or something. I think he needed to find a religion or find a relationship with God. And he'd studied with Mormons, well, actually studied with a lot of different religions. It doesn't really matter. But it was just the circumstances of the situation that touched something in him, I guess. I think at this point I should explain a little bit about my father. My father was a very violent man at that time. I think he probably still is. Controlling, domineering. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to what I'm saying. It's just the way a lot of brothers are. Anyways, he was lost. I think he'd done some time in prison for some really violent stuff. When he got out, he went way up north to get away from his family and stuff. We have a lot of old school culture where, well, as you can tell, they weren't born here. Like his parents and stuff weren't born here, and I think he was just a kid when they brought him over. When I say here, I mean Canada. Anyways, and the old culture, it's a lot of tradition, and in some ways it's similar to the Jehovah's Witnesses, but nowhere near as strict. Well, in a lot of aspects of your life, there is some privacy in the old culture, where there's nothing in Jehovah's Witnesses. Anyways, my father let them in, and that's how it started. He started studying with them. Luckily, it was coming up on Christmas. Or was it just after Christmas? So I did actually get some pictures, or my mom had some pictures. I don't have anything. I haven't seen any pictures of my childhood in a couple of decades. But there were some pictures of me as a baby in front of a Christmas tree. I know that never happened again, because when my father does anything, it's all in. Yeah, he ended up getting baptized. I think I was about 4, 3, somewhere around there. And I remember the ceremony. I remember it. I was just a little kid, and I remember it. I remember it so clearly. They actually did it in the ocean, in the Pacific there. That was weird. I remember that so clear. Anyways, life for me, I didn't know anything other than being raised a Jehovah's Witness. And we moved around a lot when I was younger. Work and different things, I remember my father left us to go to a different job. We were in just one of the suburbs of Vancouver, British Columbia. I think that's the best I can describe it, that most people understand. And he went out into the boonies out in British Columbia, and he got his job, whatever, got set up, and then we moved out there. When we got there, it was a true redneck area. I think there was nobody like us around. there was no African Americans, no Chinese, you know. I remember going to the congregation as a kid, just a little kid. I got a lot of memories back from back then, ever since in this last little while. I got a lot of memories back. But I remember it was a lot of older people, and well, and everybody was white. Everybody was white. And they had some weird ideas of right and wrong. It didn't matter what I did as a kid. It was never good enough. And it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long at all. And you give up. You know, you can't do anything right anyways. You're always scared that Jehovah's watching and something's going to happen to you. You know, he's watching everything. Oh, don't touch yourself because Jehovah's watching. There wasn't a lot of young kids in our congregation that were witness kids. And where I lived, the only witness kid I had, that was later on, I think I would have been around maybe 10. He was actually a relative of a brother in the congregation, a kid my age. But he lived clear on the other side of the town. You know, I don't know, 3-4 kilometers away. About 2 miles for, maybe a little over 2 miles for those of you going by miles. So if I wanted to spend time with him, you know, you're a kid, right? In the wintertime, you put on your snowsuit and you had to truck all the way across there. This kid had a terrible life. You know, his mother was awesome, but, you know, I think she was a bit of a drinker. But neither his mother or his father were in the religion or in the faith. And he actually did try. I think I was a bad influence on him. The reason I'm going to call these videos the Ex-JW poster child, because I feel there's just not a lot of ex-brothers on here who didn't live up to the faith. You know, and when they left, I finally heard somebody on here talking about when they left, and they were going to Armageddon. They're going to die in Armageddon anyway, so they decided if I'm going to be bad, I might as well be really bad. Well, I totally related with that, and that's when I thought I got to do a video. I definitely have to do a video. And the more I've been trying over the last couple of days, the more I've realized that there's just too much to put into one video. I left the faith after being baptized. I think I was 15 when I was baptized. I left the faith about a year later. Unbelievable. But it gave me more freedom once I was baptized to actually come up with a plan to get the hell out of there. I was living in a picker's cabin, picking fruit. It's a couple of 100 kilometers from where we lived. I was attending the congregation in that community. That was part of the deal to be able to get out of the house. I was in school. I think I was 14 actually. This is the year before I got baptized, but I'd been doing as much as I could to look decent. I remember I was working in the orchards, making money, putting it away, because my father, he was really strict, but he believed that he did his job when he gave us life, and if we wanted anything normal like other people had, it was worldly anyways, but you know, if you wanted to have, I think acid wash jeans were in back then or something, if you wanted a pair of those, you'd have to make the money yourself to buy it. And I'd been working, you know, for a few years now before I finally got the opportunity to disappear for the whole summer or whatever. There was a lot of problems in our house. You know, two different cultures fighting. The Jehovah's Witness culture being fed to us at the same time. The customs of our background being forced on us. And really didn't, you know, you take JW and you make it worse. And it didn't didn't make any sense when you're a kid. I left a lot of stuff out of this video that maybe in the future sometime I could put in. There's a lot of funny stories, different things you witness, things you see, things that make no sense even today. But I hear that a lot on here. A lot of brothers and sisters that just can't make heads or tails of a lot of things. Well, because they were pointless, useless, mind-controlling ideas from up top fed down to us. When you talk to somebody that isn't a Jehovah's Witness, has never spent any time with Jehovah's Witnesses, well, studying or anything like that, they had no clue, and a lot of them just won't believe it because they can't believe somebody would do that. You know, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you do that to your children? It's crazy. But that's the way life was, right? My story is going to be more about after leaving. I was really young. It's going to be more about after my escape. All the programming that was put into me as a child, and how it affected me after I left. All my life, after I left, for all my life up to this point, God kept putting the right people in my life at the right time. And I needed that, because if those people hadn't been there, I was incredibly self-destructive. If they hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. You know, when they give us all the teachings about worldly people and what they're like and what happens if you leave the faith and you become a part of the world, you go out there and, well, you're going to become a drug addict, a fornicator, Satan worshiper, whatever. They give you all kinds of crap because the world is dirty. The only thing clean in it is the Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, you're just going to be the worst of the worst. Well, that was what I was taught. So when I left, all that programming in my head, right? I knew I had to get my education. So it's in high school now. So I worked towards that. That's all I cared about, was getting my education, right? Because I wanted to be able to take care of myself. It wasn't like I had any family or anybody else that was going to do it. Problem was, you're a drunkard, you're a drug addict, you're this, you're that, if you leave the faith, right? Everybody is. The only thing I wasn't was an apostate, because I was too scared to do that. Can't say anything bad against the Jehovah's Witnesses. I graduated. It turned out I got dyslexia, severe dyslexia. But I graduated with honors. You know, 11, 12, I got wicked marks, grade 11, 12. I didn't understand at the time, because I was drunk the whole time. You know, I was so messed up inside. I figured, you know, it didn't matter, but I best do my best to get my education. And what a joke. I was getting pretty much straight A's, B's. I don't even remember how I did that. But I remember I ended up moving in with a couple. Both their sons were a few years older than me, and they were out of the house now. And he was an alderman, city council, and she owned some hair salons. And I got ripped off by the people I was working for. I didn't have the money to go back to school that year. I think it's grade 11. And I was working for them too at the same time, or for him anyways. He owned some restaurants, and he had an arcade in town. And I was working at that arcade in the evenings and stuff. But when the school year started, I didn't have the money to make it through the winter living in that cabin. And they took me in and they became my foster family, kind of, sort of. And great people, Stu and Juanita. They saved my life. You know, I didn't have any rules or anything when I moved in. You know, it was totally different for me. And they're worldly people. Worldly people took me in. Why would they do that? You know, worldly people. Nothing made any sense. But these were wonderful people. There's so much that I'm leaving out, but there's only so much time, you know, in these videos. You don't want to sit here and hear me rattle on forever. Anyways, they gave me a place to live. I worked the whole time. Like, I worked in the arcade. I went to school. I was late all the time. I missed a lot of school because, well, I drank real heavy. And I remember he was always threatening me that when my first report card came in, you know, after I'd moved in with him, this at the beginning of grade 11, I think. And he says, when your first report card comes in, things are going to change. Because he wasn't really my father, but he talked to the government and they kind of made him my guardian, but they weren't paying him anything or anything like that. But they explained the rules to him. There wasn't much he could do with me. But slowly he started putting rules in place. I didn't even realize it was happening. And, you know, all for my benefit. These worldly people were, you know, really trying to help me. Both his boys, you know, very, very successful men. You know, today they're, you know, they're good fathers, good men. Like, these are good people. These were good people. And I still, that's who I refer to as my father. I spoke with this man the other day, and I refer to him as my father. You know, he might not be my blood father, but he gave me more training to be a man. You know, not a violent piece of garbage, but to be an actual decent man, Christian man, than my father really ever taught me. I love this guy as a father. And I phoned Juanita too, you know, his now ex-wife. They were together for 30 years or something. That's another story that I have to tell one day. It's hilarious. The things we don't see when we're kids. They gave me every opportunity, and I did work hard. I did everything right, but I was just so messed up after leaving the faith, and that constant thought of Armageddon, 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 and you know, I'm disassociated now. I disassociated. Actually, Stu sent in a letter to disassociate me from them because they wouldn't leave me alone, and he couldn't believe the rules, and he couldn't believe that anybody'd want to live like that, and I really needed this man's help because how was I going to take care of myself? And finally, him and his lawyers, they wrote up a letter when they found out they could just write a letter to get these people off my ass. And they sent it in. Well, right when that letter, when they asked me to sign it, I signed it. You know, that was all on me. I signed it, but really, you know, I was terrified. You know, I needed somebody there for me. I signed it. They sent it in. And that's where it all started. You know, now I was on my true worldly life. There was no turning back. And it was depressing. It was scary. And everything I've been taught about worldly people, and now I was one of them. I was even worse than them because I knew the truth and I'd left it. You know, I'd left the truth, so I was worse than the worldly. I started drinking. I think I might have smoked some pot, but I really didn't like that stuff. But I sure drank a lot. All the way through high school, I was drunk. And Stu was giving me grief about, you know, because I was late all the time. I was missing a lot of school. He said, when your first report card comes in, because he figured he could use it with the government people he was talking to, social workers or whatever they were, the ones that, you know, he got permission from, you know, An older couple can't just grab some kid off the street and move him in, right? You want to be legal, especially them, right? They were. He was a city council member. He was. He had a few businesses. His wife had businesses, and they had a good name and stuff. They did everything legally, and they gave unto Caesar, right? But my report card comes in, and it was, I think, straight A's. I think I might have had a B. And he couldn't understand. He just couldn't understand. How can you get these marks when you're missing school all the time and you're drunk? You're always drunk, Well, that doesn't really matter. That's, I guess, for another time. I did college, university course, everything. I think everything I did was during my drunken period. I never failed in anything. And it wasn't me. It was always God. I know that for a fact today, that God was always with me. I don't think he was with the faith. I know he wasn't there, because those people, they don't know the first thing about faith. I've learned that throughout my life, but God was with me the whole time. Jesus was watching over me. I studied a lot of different religions, and while I was doing it, the only reason I was doing it was to discredit them. Every one of them. I met a lot of wonderful people. I studied with Mormons. I studied with Catholics. I studied with Baptists. It doesn't matter. I studied a lot of religion, and also through school, libraries. I did a lot of religion because I was just trying to figure out a way that I wouldn't have to die in Armageddon, and I didn't even realize that was what I was doing at the time. But the one religion I wouldn't look at was the Jehovah's Witness faith. And when you're studying religion and you're reading Bibles, and like the King James or the Gideon or whatever, you're reading all these different Bibles, and they're not the Bible that you've read your whole life. I read the New World Translation 6-7 times when I was a kid, and every time I saw scripture like 1 Corinthians 15:33, do not be misled. Bad association spoils useful habits. Well, you go look at a couple of different religions, it goes, well, they've left out a part of it, and some of them, the older texts, they refer to it as spirits, communicating with spirits and stuff. Well, that's exactly how the JW Bible was written, was by a bunch of spiritualists, spiritualists or whatever you call them. But the Bible, every time I saw this, and all the scriptures that were programmed into my head, Proverbs 97:1, it doesn't, all the different scriptures were different in all these other Bibles, but they're pretty close in all the other Bibles, were none of them the ones that were used on me. I think it was Psalms 97 or 10. But yeah, but there was so much difference about Jesus especially, and I wouldn't allow myself to acknowledge that. I couldn't let myself look at that, because I didn't want to be an apostate. I was already doing stuff, right? Studying with all these religions, reading their books. I was behaving as an apostate, but I couldn't take the final step and actually look at the Jehovah's Witness faith because of the fear that was programmed into the head. I really wish I had. Well, I have now, but it took years. A decade goes by, more time goes by, and finally my health gets bad. I've pushed myself hard all my life, but my health goes bad, and I'm trying to get right with God. I start watching videos on here. This is a while ago now. I watch a few, and it feels bad doing that, listening to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and I didn't want to do that. But the more research I started doing at the same time, I started doing research on the Jehovah's Witnesses for a change. The more research I did, it just blew my socks off. I couldn't believe it. This is the truth, and backing it up with evidence. Started with Russell, The Finished Mystery. I don't know if you've read that, but, I recommend that to any Jehovah's Witness that's having questions. And then, actually there's a lot of material from back then from Russell. I don't want to get to Rutherford. That's a totally different deal. But going back to the beginning in the Bible students and a lot of what they wrote, the prophesying and the false prophets, and the more I read, the less fear I had. And the less fear I had, the more I read. And I've done a lot of research now. I got books of research that, stuff I've written out, reference material, everything. The more I've done, the less fear I've had. And when you look at the truth and you bring the truth out into the light, the truth doesn't wilt and wither and die off. The truth actually grows. And that's one thing about the Jehovah's Witness faith that I want for everybody to understand is the reason they keep secrets, the reasons that they don't allow their members to speak to outside people or have relationships with worldly people is because then the truth will come out. And they've spent, from day one, they've spent decades or years or months training these people to see everybody that isn't Jehovah's Witness as the enemy. And I don't recall Jesus anywhere in the Bible teaching to treat people as your enemies. That's not what it's about, right? You're to love your brother, right? That's what we're taught, to love our brother. Love your neighbor, right? But the Jehovah's Witnesses go against all that, and I don't understand why so many smart people who know this from the Bible don't see that. But I need to end this video because it's getting pretty long. I got a lot of things I'd like to talk about, but I think it's going to be pointless. This is, I guess, an introduction to me. My name is Indy, and I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. That sounds like some kind of 12-step program, doesn't it? My name is Indy, and I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I still love Jehovah's Witnesses. I just feel sorry for you now. I feel really sorry for you, but hopefully this helps somebody to actually look into the faith. Maybe they can relate, and it might be the push that you need to actually look at the faith. Start from the beginning, then move. I'm not saying going back all the way to the Millerites or the Seventh-day Adventists. Just, start from Russell and move your way forward. You'll see all that stuff as you do it anyways. But, take a look at it and move forward from there. All right, I love you guys. And I love everybody. I'm really trying. And I love Jesus. Have a good day.